All right, let's get right into it. Today we are tackling a really big question, one that probably affects every single one of us with a smartphone in India. Do all these new startups that are popping up left and right actually care about our privacy?
I mean, just think about your phone for a second. It's probably loaded with apps for just about everything you can imagine. But have you ever really stopped and asked yourself, with all this incredible convenience, what's the actual price we're paying? Where is all our data going?
And let's be honest, the startup scene is just exploding with these wild and creative ideas. You can find an app for pretty much anything, learning an ancient language in just 10 days, or, even renting your neighbor's dog for a walk. But this whole innovation boom, it's got a flip side that we really need to look at.
So we're going to go way beyond just glancing at that tiny privacy policy link buried at the bottom of a website. The real question here is so much bigger than that.
This is really the heart of the matter. Are these companies treating your personal information with the respect it deserves? As something that belongs to you? Or has it just become a resource, like raw fuel to power their ad machines, pump up their profits, and make their pitch decks look good to investors? That's the central tension we're digging into today.
So, to figure this out, our first stop has to be the rule book, the laws. And for a long time, this whole area has been, let's just say, a bit of a gray zone, filled with loopholes that have left our data pretty exposed.
And the difference here is, it's night and day. The old law from all the way back in 2000 was so vague. It just asked for reasonable security, but never said what that meant. Now, the new Digital Personal Data Protection Act from 2023, it's a massive upgrade. It's specific. It demands our consent. It tells companies to only take the data they absolutely need. And this is huge. It brings in actual penalties. On paper, it sounds fantastic. But there's always a but.
Yeah, there's a huge gap between the law being written and what's happening on the ground. For one, the new act isn't even fully enforced yet. A lot of startups are either dragging their heels or just don't even know about it. And honestly, unless you're in a super regulated industry like Fintech or Healthtech, privacy is way down on the priority list. For most founders, the main goal is just one thing: scale fast, hit those numbers, and deal with the boring protocol stuff maybe later.
Okay, so we've looked at the laws, and they're a work in progress. But now let's get to the hard evidence, the numbers that really paint the picture. You could say this is the smoking gun part of our little investigation.
So, a survey by local circles found that a whopping 68% of Indian users do not trust startups with their data. Just let that sink in for a second. That's more than 2 out of every 3 people feeling uneasy. This isn't some small crack. It's a massive canyon of a trust deficit.
And hey, here might be a big reason why. A PwC report discovered that 62% of Indian startups don't have a single person officially in charge of data protection, no privacy officer, which means for most of them, there's nobody whose actual job it is to make sure your data is being handled the right way.
And then we have this number, 70%.
What does that mean? It means that 70% of apps from Indian startups are asking for permissions on your phone that they have no business asking for. You know what I'm talking about, the calculator app that wants your location 24/7, or a simple little game that wants to access your microphone and read your entire contact list. That's just data hoarding, plain and simple, and it's happening right there on our phones.
Okay, so we've seen what's going on. Now let's talk about why. To do that, we kind of have to get inside the head of a typical startup founder and understand the core motivation. This quote from a cybersecurity expert in Bengaluru just says it all, doesn't it? The whole approach is completely reactive. Privacy isn't something you build in from the start. It's a fire you desperately try to put out after your house is already burned down.
And that's really the bottom line here. In that whole hustle culture world of startups, actually building in strong privacy protections is seen as a drag. It's a liability that just slows down growth. It's treated like some annoying hurdle you have to jump over, not as a fundamental right that your users deserve.
You know, if privacy policies were actually forced, to be honest, they'd probably sound a little something like this. It's hilarious because it feels so true, right? It just perfectly captures that flimsy, let's just check this box attitude that so many companies seem to have about protecting our data.
Right, so the picture we've painted looks a little gloomy, I'll admit. But it's not hopeless. It doesn't have to be this way. So let's talk about the path forward. How do we get privacy to be more than just a forgotten checkbox and make it a real part of a company's culture?
The way forward is actually pretty clear. First, startups have to build privacy into their products from day one. It can't be an afterthought. Second, everyone on the team, from the CEO down, needs to understand why this matters. Third, these new laws, they need to be enforced with real, serious consequences. And finally, investors need to step up and make data ethics a non-negotiable part of their investment process.
So, we've looked at the laws, we've seen the data, we've peeked into the motives. I think it's time we circle all the way back to that first question and deliver a final verdict.
So, after all of that, what's the real answer? Do they actually care about our privacy? Look, the honest truth, based on all the evidence, no, most of them don't. For the majority, privacy is just an inconvenience, a box they have to tick, and something they'll only really pay attention to when they're forced to, either by a massive data breach or by the government cracking down.
But here's the incredible opportunity they're missing. The startups that figure this out are the ones that are going to win. Because at the end of the day, earning and keeping your trust is so much more valuable in the long run than any single piece of data they could ever collect. That's the real game changer.
It's pretty clear this mindset of treating our personal data like it's just free fuel for a growth engine has to change. So I'll just leave you with this question to mull over. As a user, what is your trust, and what is your data really worth?